Hello and welcome to the Horror Homestead. My name is GiBi and this is the FNAF community update. It's been a week. It's definitely been a week. A few days ago I released a video about why I don't think that the Tiger Rock plush's appearance in Help Wanted 2 means that Tales Games is canon. In that video I was mostly talking about why I don't think it's canon, but one of the things I didn't do is explain what any of those things mean. I just kind of sat down and tippity-typed stuff out and then talked into my microphone, and I assumed that everyone who'd be watching was aware of what was going on. ID's Fantasy put out a great video not only stating basically my opinion and my same evidence, but also explaining what all of it meant. So if for whatever reason you watched my video and had no idea what I was talking about, ID's Fantasy goes over everything basically for beginners. But she's not the only person who made a video on this topic. Basically every FNAF YouTuber did. Rytoast, Hyperdroid, She's Always Nervous. And what's interesting to note about their takes is not only do they all agree that the Tiger plush does mean that the books are canon, but they all kind of started from different spots. Rytoast did not believe that the books were canon prior to this. She's Always Nervous didn't want the books to be canon prior to this, and still doesn't. Her video on this topic is actually phenomenal. If you're anti the books being in the games, but you do think that this was compelling evidence, go watch her video. I'm going to link it in the description. But we have this interesting spectrum of people who weren't convinced before but are now, people who didn't want to be convinced but still are, people who already thought it was true and now see it as being total evidence, and then people who weren't convinced and still aren't. So whatever your flavor is, you can find someone who will state your own opinion back to you, but I do recommend you watch all 5 videos I just mentioned. Mine, ID's Fantasies, Hyperdroid's, Rytoast, She's Always Nervous. Again, I'm going to link them all in the description. They're all very different. Some of them are heavily edited, like, this happened, and then this happened, and this is what that means. And then some of them are just people talking to their camera about their feelings about like, what it all means. Because it's always important to not just seek out your own opinion, but to also listen to what other people have to say. When I wrote my video, I explicitly didn't watch anybody else's take on it, because I didn't want to be even subconsciously influenced to, like, maybe refer to something that they had said. Like, if someone said a weird phrase like, oh, the books are totally forever canon, which is not a phrase, which is why I'm using it as an example so that nobody thinks that I'm quoting someone. If someone said the books are totally forever canon, and then in my video I said, like, I don't think the books are totally forever canon, they might think that's commentary on theirs. So I specifically didn't watch a single other person's video before making mine. With that said, now that my video's out, I have watched all of theirs. And I have not changed my opinion. I still think that the Tiger Rock plush being in the game has absolutely nothing to do with the books being canon. My argument, in case you don't want to watch my really long rambling video, can basically be summarized as, other franchises do this kind of thing all the time, and I think it's weird to interpret the evidence in the way that people have been. My best example would be the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When Disney announced that they were making a movie called Age of Ultron, that did not mean they were making a movie in which Hank Pym built a robot called Ultron, and then Wolverine and the Invisible Woman have to go back in time to stop it. Now, nobody was really thinking that, especially people who were tuned into the industry, because they knew that Disney didn't own the characters of Wolverine and the Invisible Woman, so they thought, okay, it's going to be a loose adaptation, maybe something else will happen. But we do know that Ultron's in it, and if Ultron's in it, and Ultron was built by Hank Pym, that must mean that Hank Pym and some version of his backstory are canon. So even if the whole thing's not canon, the related side stories, that still means that Hank Pym is, and no he's not. The evil killer robot being real in this continuity does not mean the man who made him is. In fact, it is probably more likely that the inventor man who is already in this continuity is the one who made him. That's my argument. And with that, we're going to launch into some other questions. Attempt number 5 of getting this answered. So I read like 99% of my comments, so I do typically see them. Sometimes I'll skip over them if I don't think I have something interesting to say, but this person's been so persistent that I feel like I have to, otherwise they're just going to keep going. That does not mean if you want your question answered, you should be persistent, because again, if I have nothing to say, I'm just not going to address it. I have a question. Which parts of the game are gameplay and which is canon? Like, there was a question about the jump scare sounds in a previous Q&A, and I think that was just for gameplay, and that not everything has to be canon. So that previous question was like, how do the animatronics make sound? Because in the week before, it does explicitly say that he doesn't think that Freddy should be able to make sound, but obviously he does. And someone asked me, like, where does the scream come from the animatronics? Is it from the kids inside the suit? Is it like the ghosts are screaming? Or is it the animatronic making a sound? Do they have speakers in them? I think the week before has now answered that there aren't speakers in them. My take is that there were, but I was wrong, because the week before hadn't come out yet. And so this unpronounceable usernamed person is saying, you know what, if I can pronounce Rick Fafaska, I think I can pronounce Nagayanzander. Nagayanzander. They're saying that they think that in real life there isn't a jump scare, at least in FNAF 1. Like, that's only there for the benefit of the player, and that when the animatronics attack Mike, he doesn't actually hear anything. Obviously, with other robots like the Fun Times, there probably is a jump scare, but like, yeah, if it does make sense that the jump scare is only for the player. Continuing. Not everything has to be canon. The same as with Mike and Sister Location. Was Mike actually that friendly of a guy that his neighbors waved to him every day, or was that just for comedic gameplay effect? Or was it representing him in public in general, not just his neighborhood? As I've said multiple times, I think that the video games, the arcade games, the cutscenes are so interpolalistic. It's not a word, but you know what I mean. You probably know what I mean more than if I'd used the correct term. They're so interpolalistic that to try to claim that, like, oh, this means that every single day Mike walked down the street, oh, this means that Mike has 12 neighbors. I wonder, I don't know if he has 12 neighbors, but he has a certain number of neighbors. Maybe that's symbolistic of something. It's like, no, it was just a general indication. He's walking down the street, he's normal, and then each day people start getting more and more concerned about his physical appearance. Also, what parts of UCN are canon? Because I don't think William could actually customize his own eternal torture. Yes, I personally also don't think that the menu is canon, but a lot of people are using the menu of Into the Pit to try to determine whether or not it's a real game in universe, because the game starts with you looking at a television screen with static. So does that show that Into the Pit is an in-universe game, or is Into the Pit game canon, or what? What's going on? I don't know how canon the menus are. And no one does. So I think it really just has to come down to, like, I would say common sense, but it's not even common sense. It's just like, what is your interpretation? And just go with that, because this is something that gets so focused on minute details that there's literally nothing that people will agree on if they disagree. Like, if you think that the menus in Into the Pit mean something and someone else doesn't, you're not going to convince each other of it. It's just like, I think it's gameplay. I think it's lore. That's all you get. I'm confused about the spring locking taking place before FNAF 1 theory. If William dismantles the FNAF 1 animatronics before the game takes place, how are we attacked by them? I doubt Phasma Entertainment would bother to repair them. So this is a theory that I've put forth. I also know that ID's Fantasy has put it forth, where the events of Follow Me, where William dismantles the animatronics in the run-down FNAF 1 location, happens before FNAF 1. And this person's asking, how does this happen if we're then attacked by them in FNAF 1? I doubt Phasma Entertainment would be bothered to repair them. And the answer is that they do repair them. FNAF 2, the Wizards are Wizards. We know that they are then repaired into the classics from FNAF 1. Phasma Entertainment definitely does repair them. I think ID's Fantasy was the first person to point out that it's actually likely that William dismantling the animatronics in Follow Me is what caused them to then get repaired to the extent that they are to become the classics. Her main evidence relies on the fact that the sprites in Follow Me have buttons on them, the same number of buttons as the Wizards, but not the classics, meaning that the Follow Me animatronics are closer to the Wizards than they are the classics. So the theory would be that the original FNAF location where the MCI happened is the same as the FNAF 1 locations, the same physical building. After the MCI, the building enters into a state of disrepair, the roof is leaking, there's water coming down, etc. FNAF 2 opens. Wizards are shoved in the back, toy animatronics get made. FNAF 2 Bite of 87 murders, DCI stuff happens, toy animatronics get scrapped, they decide to rebuild the Wizards and move them back into the original building. They move the Wizards back into the original building, do some repairs on them to like give Bonnie his face back, but the roof is still leaking, they're not ready to be opened. William, having just committed the DCI and who is now a wanted man because they seem to know that someone who was an employee is the one who did the DCI, runs into that location, breaks in, and wants to lure the animatronics to the back to collect their remnant. He does this, dismantles them, goes in the back, gets spring-locked. The next day, while they're still repairing the building, is when they come in and they board up the safe room. They then take the dismantled animatronics and they rebuild them, and that's how we get the classics, and that's why the classics are so different than the Wizards. So that's the proposed timeline based on the button evidence of Follow Me, and because it fits really well. So I hope that answers your question. Phasma Entertainment did repair them, so why couldn't that repair come after they were dismantled? Okay, so this is a really long comment, and I only want to focus in on one little part, because again, I'm really only going to go over things that I have a good response to. So to them, this is a tangent. I apologize for not answering your much longer question. I just don't really have much of an opinion on that, but I will answer this part. Their theory is that Candy Cadet is only there to explain the deaths in the series. The only other story he has, besides The Witch in the Forest, that is strange is the one about best pizza deal ever, where everyone just randomly dies at the end. So people think that when you first give a coin to Candy Cadet, that he's like, one day there's the best pizza ever, and then everyone died at the end. And that this is just teaching you the mechanic that if you put a Phas token into him, he will tell you a story. So their theory is that the best pizza deal ever, where everyone randomly dies at the end story, could be a reference to the entire staff of the Pizzaplex being led to their deaths under the guise of a company retreat, or a glorified pizza party.
Now I will tell you a story. about a family that missed the most important opportunity in their lives. It was a limited-time offer that included a family-style pizza with all their favorite toppings. It also came with a side of fries, mozzarella sticks, extra-large soft drinks and a toy surprise. It was only $49.99 while supplies lasted. They did not purchase the food and they all died.
So one of the other theories about security breach is that we see all these little notes and memos about there being a staff meeting. And then you go into the staff meeting room and there's like chairs and stuff turned over. And it's like, what happened in here? Did they kill the entire staff? Because we know at this point in the story, they've all been replaced by robots and the only human there is Vanessa. So was the entire staff killed? Maybe that could be what Candy Cadet is talking about. And I just think that's a great point and that's a great idea. Great theory, great notice. Great observation. This commenter is pointing out that in one of Raito's videos, he came up with the theory that the puppet could actually be named Cassidy in the game's continuity. Bringing up the example that sometimes between continuities, characters with the same name fulfill different roles. For example, Charlie in the books never becomes the puppet. A character named Mike in the books becomes Golden Freddy. So why can't Cassidy, the name we get in the FNAF games, be the character in the puppet who is also Henry's daughter? So that would make the puppet the one in the security book talking to Dave. That's really the only thing it changes. My response to that is simply that that would mean that we have the names for all of the kids except for Golden Freddy. If you think back to the gravestone ending, there's two names you can't read. There's the one under the tree on the big hill, and there's the one that's obfuscated by the grass. A lot of people, myself included, think that the gravestone that's shown in the security logbook, which came out right after that game, that shows a gravestone that says my name on it, is indicating to us, the player, the reader, that we're supposed to be solving that missing gravestone from the ending of the previous game that had just come out. I'm Jar Jar Binks. And so likely the name that we get in that book would be the name on that gravestone. An alternative theory could be that the grave on the hill is Dave, and that the one that's obfuscated is the puppet, which means that the only person in Golden Freddy is Dave. There was only ever the MCI kids, and one of them was Cassidy Charlie, the puppet Cassidy, and that Dave was different, which also means one of the 5 spirits in FNAF 3 was Dave, and then in Happiest Day you'd have the 4 kids and Charlie and Dave. So there's only 6 graves because you only have the 5 MCI kids. Charlie's one of the MCI kids. Charlie meaning the puppet. Cassidy, named Cassidy. Puppet. Puppet's one of the MCI kids. And there's only one soul in Golden Freddy. So, like, it works. It does work. Like everything I say, all FNAF theories are just fan fiction backed up by textual evidence. I didn't watch Raito's videos. I'll probably do that right after this, actually. But I think it's a good point. Here's why Frights fiction is not correct. If we're assuming Fazbear Entertainment is releasing this along with Help Wanted, this doesn't work. There are Fazbear Frights stories about Help Wanted. Why would you make a story about your cover-up? I don't think Fazbear Frights is canon at all. So you're partially right. Frights fiction is the theory that the Fazbear Frights series of books are actually in-universe novels released by Fazbear Entertainment alongside something like the game Help Wanted. It was a VR game that they were developing to sort of make light of the history of Freddy's, to make it seem like it's all just ghost stories and rumors, and so they would also release Fazbear Frights 1 to make money, and 2 to kind of make all those old stories seem silly. Like, oh, haha, they're just like these books. A girl named Charlotte didn't die in the alleyway outside of a Freddy's location. A girl named Charlotte was at a party and she just got sick and was taken into the back. And the person who died in the alleyway was this bad boy named Alec who got taken over by a lonely Freddy. And doesn't that just seem ridiculous? You're just making stuff up. You're confusing reality with those silly books we released. As this comment points out, they released books about Help Wanted, specifically the Steve Snodgrass character who was the indie developer who made the games that Help Wanted was based on. Either you know what I'm saying or you don't, and this is already completely incomprehensible. You know what I'm talking about. The thing is that story, Help Wanted, is not from Fazbear Frights, it's from Tales from the Pizzaplex. Tales from the Pizzaplex continuity, whether the entire thing's canon, it's entirely fiction in a parallel universe, it's fiction within the story itself, is completely different than whether or not Fazbear Frights is any of those things. I've done 2 community polls now about this topic, and most people seem to think that Tales from the Pizzaplex is within games continuity, and Fazbear Frights isn't. In both of my polls, more people thought that Tales from the Pizzaplex was in game continuity than they did think Fazbear Frights was in game continuity. As of right now, the majority opinion seems to be that Tales is canon and Frights isn't. So the story Help Wanted about that game developer being in Tales from the Pizzaplex has no bearing on whether or not Frights is canon. I just today realized the little face in the beginning is a G. I'm such a detective. They're referring to my logo, and not only is the face a G, but the entire thing is letters. His little mouth and then the dots on either end are the two eyes of GiBi, and the drool coming out of his mouth is what makes up the B. Also, that is drool, that's not a tongue. So the face is a G, the mouth is an I, the drool is a B, and then the mouth in the other direction is the other I. It spells GiBi. Isn't that so clever? Oh my god. Thank you for watching. Once again, the video I'm mainly recommending this week is She's Always Nervous's video about the Tiger Rock plush. If you're someone who didn't want the books to be canon, but now thinks they are, I think that's a great, let's all cope together video. That and all the other videos I mentioned are going to be linked in the description. Thank you for watching. Be sure to be nice to each other in the comments. Consider supporting the creators you admire. I have my Patreon linked below. You can also buy this hat and plenty of other GiBi merch on my merch store. Remember that FREDDY stands for friendly, respectful engagement, discussion, and discourse yields success, and never lose sight of the things that are important to you.